potential utilization of insects as alternative protein source in diets of farmed fish, acceptance of black soldier's fly larvae meal in Kenya. Mr. Kevin, take the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Okay, my name is Kevin Ouko. I'm a PhD student at Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University. I'm currently undertaking my research, and it's a pleasure to be here to present on this day. So my research, or my topic for today for presentation, is on potential utilization of insects as alternative protein sources in diets of farmed fish, and specifically the use of black soldier fly meal in Kenya. So when we talk about farmed fish, we are looking at aquaculture in general. So at Jaramogi, we are currently doing research on the use of insects as food and feed under the African Center of Excellence on the use of insects as food and feed. And this is part of what I'm doing, although this is a review. So that's the order of my presentation: background, research problem, methodology, results and discussions, and conclusion. Globally, the population is projected to increase to around 9.5 billion people by 2050. So because of the projected increase in population, then definitely then the food demand is also projected to increase. So there is need to increase global food production from the current levels by about 60%. And this will be able to enhance the achievement of one of the Sustainable Development Goals, number 2, on achieving food security. But then one of the major sources of food is protein. And approximately 200 million people in Africa derive high quality and low cost protein from fish. So people are moving from red meat to white meat. But then there is a very big problem in terms of aquaculture production. So the current production levels vis-a-vis the demand, there is a very huge gap, and therefore there is need to bridge the supply-demand gap. And in bridging this, then aquaculture comes in handy. So the current production trends in terms of the quantity, the metric tons of fish production in Kenya, the landings from Lake Victoria has been on decline. In Kenya, we majorly rely on the landings from Lake Victoria, and you can see between 2015 and 2019, there's been a declining trend in terms of fish production. So again, fish farming is coming in handy in terms of bridging this particular gap, and you can see that there is unsteady trend in terms of fish farming. So this is the trend in aquaculture production in Kenya from 2006 to 2019. So there's been, between 2010 and 2016, there was some steady rise, and then again there's been some drop in terms of production. So the major cultured fish species in Kenya are Nile tilapia, which takes the highest or the largest volume, followed by the African catfish, although there are other cultured fish species like the common carp and even the rainbow trout following in that particular sequence. So there's a gap in terms of fish production, in terms of what we produce and the demand, and therefore as a country we are still importing. And that's why when you go to the market, you're able to get the Chinese fish, the one from China. And most of you are not able to distinguish between the fish from the lake or cages and the one from China. So you can see that particular trend in terms of whatever we're exporting and whatever we're importing. Then now, what is the major challenge? Why do we have a decline in production? Why is it that there's a decline in production? So in aquaculture, aquaculture basically rely on quality and affordable aqua feeds. And the feed specifically takes about 40 to 60% of the total variable cost of production. So this becomes a problem because most of the aquaculture farmers rely on fish meal. Fish meal is called silver spirinid, or the locally known as omena or uchonga. So there's also a competition. There's competition in terms of the demand for fish meal. In terms of other livestock, it can be used as livestock feed, poultry feed, and even we still want to use it in aquaculture production, and even as human food. So there's that particular fluctuation in terms of the use of fish meal. And therefore, we need to get alternative, sustainable feeds that can supplement So the limited availability and the high prices of fish meal could also be attributed to factors like the fluctuating state of fisheries, overexploitation in terms of the unlimited use in terms of demand for fish meal. So then what next? There is need for sustainability. So that means that we need to get alternative sources of feed for our aquaculture production. So one of the alternative could be animal protein sources, like meat and bone meal could be used. There could be poultry byproduct, blood meal. However, these particular animal protein sources have received low approval ratings due to some of the sociocultural orientations within the communities. And just as I mentioned earlier, fish meal being used as one of the animal protein sources has got other alternative uses in terms of livestock production and poultry production. Another alternative source could be the plant protein. However, plant proteins have got some problems. They present some anti-nutritional factors. They have high levels of fiber and starch polysaccharides. The quantities of the fatty acids are also low. So this could still impair the fish intestinal integrity. So again, one of the major plant protein sources is soybean. But then soybean, the cost of soybean is high. Soybean has got alternative uses, still competing in terms of human food and animal feed. The use of production of soybean could lead to some environmental detriment in terms of deforestation, soil erosion, eutrophication, among others. And so we are looking for alternative, sustainable sources of feed. So insects come in handy. So recently there's been a rise, an increase in terms of the number of research that is being done in the use of edible insects in terms of use of feed, as food and feed. So one of the alternatives could be the black soldier fly. So the black soldier fly is used at the larvae level. So we'd want to use the black soldier fly to increase our production in aquaculture so that we can have maximum output. So you're looking at it in terms of technical efficiency, in terms of getting the maximum output from the use of the black soldier fly, using the least cost possible. And then acceptance come in handy when we now look at the perception. Is it going to be accepted in the society? Are farmers willing to accept and adopt the use of the black soldier fly? Are they willing to pay for the black soldier fly in terms of the value, the nutritional value that it is bringing in hand in aquaculture? So this particular study was a review. It was a systematic review. So it took what is called PRISMA, the Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. And we did a number of literature search from selected databases. And there were a number of inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria. So we're looking at the original or review studies that meet some academic quality merit by being peer reviewed. These particular articles were in English language, and they were published after the year 2008. And they were available online and in full text. So specifically, we're also looking at data that presented the use of BSF in fish production in sub-Saharan Africa, and with more focus in Kenya. And another major focus was that a controlled diet that contained fish meal. So those were some of the inclusion criteria in terms of our analysis, our study. So what was our finding? So we found out that why do we use insect-based meals in terms of in agriculture production? So one of the reasons why insects could be used is that they have outstanding capacity to upgrade low-quality organic material. So most of these insects could be reared in organic wastes or the food waste. So they are able to convert these particular wastes and do some environmental cleanup. They also require minimal water as opposed to livestock. So minimal water could be used, and they also require small space in terms of cultivation. So you could just have a structure and then you do your black soldier fly, or you do maybe your earthworm, and so on and so forth. Again, there's the shift in insect-based feeds in terms of the circular economic opportunities based on that aspect of environmental cleanup services, and so we're able to recycle the bio-waste. So again, insects are very good because they emit less greenhouse gas emission. And currently we are fighting climate change. Under SDG number 13, the issues to do with the climate actions, the major focus in reducing the global greenhouse gas emissions. So insects come in handy. So Kenya is one of the countries that is currently, insect farming is coming, culturing is emerging. And there are some legislative issues that are being discussed on course so that the use of insects can be legalized or can be documented in terms of legislation. So globally, European Commission has allowed the use of some insects, and among them, black soldier fly could be used. There is common housefly, the yellow mealworm, house cricket, and even field cricket. But then the use of these particular insects depends on the type of substrate that is used. So the type of substrate that is used in terms of rearing these particular insects will dictate the nutritional quality of these particular insects. So again, research from our study, we found that most of the feed manufacturers are willing to include these particular insects in their feed, but given that there are some acceptable legislation and market acceptance. So what are some of the benefits and challenges of using the insect meals? So one of the benefits is that insects are locally available and they have the small ecological footprints. So insects you could, like for the black soldier fly, they are found naturally in poultry, in the poultry waste, manure waste, or even the pig waste. So you could get them you could get them locally and breed them and rear them and use them as alternative feeds. They have also high protein and lipid contents. In terms of food conversion ratio, they have high food conversion ratio. And then again, another issue is that the use of rearing insects could also be very important in terms of income generation, especially to the youth and even the women in our rural areas. So the challenges are that the possibility of these insects that they have some anti-nutritional properties that and even food safety concerns that need to be looked into. Again, there could be some difficulty in breeding because it's a new area that needs research, and there is need to be training in terms of the capacity development. So in terms of the acceptance, in Uganda, there's been studies in terms of acceptance, and most fish farmers are willing to accept. In Kenya, there's a study by CHI who found that farmers were aware of the use of these particular insects in terms of fish production and even other animal production like pig and poultry. So why are we now focusing on BSF and not any other insect in terms of this particular study? So for BSF, the life cycle of BSF is that within 3 months you're able to get your larvae and even get your feed in terms of drying. So So for the BSF, the crude protein content is up to 42.1%, although fish require between 30 to 55%, depending on the stage of growth. Defatted BSF had got up to 56.9%. In terms of energy, between 20 to 24 megajoules per kilogram. And you can see there, BSF can be reared on locally available materials. You can see the wastes, like potato peels and so on. And then in terms of rearing, a study by Fiabo and Nakimbukwe in 2007 found that, in 2017 found that if you rear BSF in a space of 5 meters by 10 meters, you can get up to 2 tons of fresh larvae, and then you only use a production cost of $0.2 per kilogram, and then you're able to get a return of up to 0.9 kilograms of dry matter. So BSF has been tried in various insects, in various fish, and those are some of the studies. In the global market, there are countries that are already having mass production, like there's AgriProtein in South Africa, there's the F4F SPY in Chile, among others. And consumers are organizing themselves, and even producers are organizing themselves to do insect production, like the Dutch Insect Brewers Association. There's the International Platform of Insects for Food and Feed, among others. So locally in our country, in Kenya, there are ongoing projects, like there's the green insect that was at Jaramogi, there's the INSFeed at Isipe, then there's the INSEFood that I'm currently attached to, among other projects. And even in terms of publication, the JIF, the Journal of Insects as Food and Feed, was established in 2015 specifically to focus on research in terms of the use of insects as food and feed. So some of the challenges that most farmers are still not aware of the use of this BSF, and so there's need for creating awareness. In terms of breeding and even substrate management, there's still, the environment that is appropriate is still under investigation. And then culturally, the acceptance of the use of insects, generally there's that neophobia aspect. People do not want to associate themselves with the use of insects. In conclusion, we can say that the use of insects like BSF is sustainable. It can be used. It can supplement the fish meal that has been overexploited and has got competing use. BSF is very important in terms of cleaning the environment, requiring very cheap materials in terms of usage. And then we are seeing that it is a very promising and link in terms of the feed industry globally. So again, we need to take actions to raise awareness for the opportunities that are offered by this particular insect. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. I want to invite only one question, because of time. One question. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for this very interesting and eye-opening and thought-provoking presentation. My question is this: are there other use cases of BSF other than production of fish feed? We know that omena, as we've called it, is also used in production of animal chicken feed. Can it also be used as a human food intake by human population? We know right now chicken is very expensive, fish is out of reach. That will be my quick question.
Okay, so there are a number of edible insects, and they have been categorized. So there are studies that are ongoing, but so far BSF is not edible. It cannot be used as human food. Although there are other insects that have been studied, like cricket can be used. At Jaramogi, currently we are doing cricket production. We have an insect farm, and we are doing cricket. We are doing cricket buns, we are doing cricket cookies, we are doing fried crickets and even smoked. So you are free to come and taste the cricket as we wait for research on the use of BSF as food. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kevin, for that wonderful presentation. I would request that we move on because of time. I'm going to call upon Rachel Nangobi from Egerton University. Can we clap for Kevin as he leaves the floor? Very good. Thank you very much. Is Rachel there? Virtually, okay. Can you please hook her up? While they are setting up, I can take, I think Kevin can take maybe one question while we are waiting for Rachel to be hooked up. Any response to Kevin's research? The use of insects as feeds for fish, farmed fish? Yes, madam. There, yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for this, Dr. Is it Mr. Ogo?
Yes,
Yeah,
Kevin,
thank you
yes.
for this. Actually, I'm so much interested in fish farming, and that's why I was very keen listening to this. My question is not really a question. I want to know about the cricket cookies and the buns. Just tell us something about it, just shortly, please.
Yes. Kevin, any response to?
So I've actually tested the cookie, so I'm so...
Cricket cookies and buns, etc.
So there will be a presentation on cricket. There's someone who will be presenting on cricket, and I think that particular presentation will be a serious eye-opener. I really don't know if he carried some cookies, but in case he carried, you'll be having a bite, maybe a test. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want us to move on to the second presentation. Madam Rachel Nangobi, welcome to this session.
Thank you so much.
Allow me to give you only 15 minutes to do your presentation, please. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, fine. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I am Namburi Rachel, and I'm presenting right from Uganda. I'm a student at Ecrlf University. I'll be presenting to you my article, and maybe I request the host to allow me share the screen.
Host, please. She's requesting if the host can allow her to to share her screen.
So can you able to see?
Yes, we can. Just make it on a presentation mode. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I'm Namburi Rachel, and I'm a student at Ecrlf University, and I'll be presenting to you an article about the factors influencing leadership styles in the farm organizations in Uganda. I'm doing this study under the supervision of Professor Patience and Dr. Navasi. I'll take you through the introduction, the methods, out that majority of the farm organizations, that was 59.56%, used both democratic and autocratic leadership styles, as compared to using only democratic style alone. And this finding is backed up by Jane and a friend, and then Mohammed et al., who suggest that organizations are better off using both democratic and autocratic leadership styles. That is, of course, interchangeably, depending on the situation at hand. That is, if they are to ensure both efficiency and effectiveness. Then, from the logistic regression model, there are the results. It was found out that savings or the saving culture in the farmer groups, the committee size, the organization, like the number of departments, then the leadership passion, outlet distribution channels, that is the use of outlet distribution channels, then total costs incurred by a group, the value of fiscal resources that are owned by a farmer group, and then the total revenue earned by a farmer group do influence the choice of leadership styles to be used by a farm organization. Now, the discussions, we found out that the saving culture significantly influences the choice of leadership styles at 5% by 17%. And so we see that as the farmer groups that do have the saving culture within them, as the group adopts the saving culture, its chances of using both democracy and autocracy also increase. And the finding is supported by Jane and Mohammed et al., because they post that democracy ensures effectiveness in a group, then the autocratic style can help to control money handling activities for proper accountability. So a group that is doing savings as part of the activities will have 5% chance of using both democracy and autocracy. Then the committee size, it was also found out that as the number of committee members or the committee size increases in a group, then the chances of choosing or using both democracy or democratic and autocratic style decreases at 1% by 6%. So the study is also supported by Hag and the Friend, that is 2020, and they suggest that as the increase as the committee size of the farmer group increases, then it means that the skills, the knowledge, and the expertise in that group will also increase. So as the expertise, knowledge of these committee members are increasing, of course, they cannot let the group leader take full control of the group, so they will have to influence which leadership style to be used. Then for the organization departments, it was also found that as the number of departments increase in a farm organization, then there is significant chance that a group will use both democracy and autocracy by 7%. However, this study contradicts by Wang and the Friend, because for them they suggest that they post that as the departments increase, then a leader will cease to be a central decision maker, and this will push the styles to the democracy or the democratic style. But then, for this case, you find that the study was dealing with farmer groups, and we all know that most of the farmer groups may not be having that as in such knowledgeable farmers or members that can really rely on only democracy. So such an issue could be the reason as to why the study contradicts with Wang and the colleague, and that for this kind of a study, as the group departments increase, then there will tendency to adopt both the democracy and autocracy, because the autocratic style will be needed to guide these members of the group, since they will not be having that adequate knowledge. Then for the leadership style, the leadership passion, as in if we find, as in groups that are having leaders that are passionate about their leadership, have chances of using both democracy and autocracy at 17%, by 17%. And this study is supported by Siren et al., who suggest that passionate leaders will increase the probability of using both democracy and autocracy, because due to their passion, due to the fact that they are passionate, they will clearly communicate the vision of the group. They will inspire innovative thinking and seek feedback from group members, and so it will make them be democratic. However, for them to acquire social acceptance and improve their self-esteem, of course, at a point they may not take in all the feedback. At a point, they will tend to restrict some of the feedback from group members, which will now then bring in the element of autocratic leadership style. Then for the outlet distribution channels, it was found out that groups that use outlet distribution channels stand chances of increasing the probability of using both democracy and autocracy as leadership styles by 17%. So we can see that both autocracy and democracy work best when used jointly. That is according to Okeke 2019. So as the autocracy, in this case, autocracy may help to regulate the distribution activities and hence control costs for an organization, which democracy alone may not be sufficient. Then organization costs. It was also found out that as costs incurred by an organization or a group increase, then that farm organization stands chance of using both democracy and autocracy. We see that incurring high costs in a farmer group may force the group leader not to fully involve the members in the decision making. So he will have to keenly monitor the business activities and operations by the members in order to rescue the organization from such a situation. This thus will call for an interplay between democratic and autocratic leadership styles than using only democracy. Then for the organizational leadership styles, it was also found that the more value the fiscal resources of an organization, then the more the probability of using both democratic and autocratic leadership style. And this study is supported by Benzen et al. 2017, who suggests that democracy alone may not sufficiently maintain and guard the resources as it offers a lot of freedom to the group members. So to put some control over the resources of an organization, a leader may need to put in some bit of autocratic leadership style as a way of controlling the resources of an organization. That study that
You have 1 minute.
also suggests that because leaders in such organizations are having very many or high value fiscal resources may want to also guard their privileges of course using such resources, the autocratic style will also come in. Then when we got to the organizational revenue, it was found out that as the revenue of a farmer group increases, that farmer group stands chance at 5% to to adopt only democratic style. In other words, as the revenue of a group increases, then the group stands chances, as in of using only democracy than using both democracy and autocracy. Like this study contradicts with the findings of these scholars here, Ahmed et al., Benzen, and others, whereby these scholars suggest that as the revenue increases, then the probability of adopting autocratic style will also increase. And they also suggest that such style will come up because the leaders would want to use now the revenue to command and coordinate the necessary labor, as well as, of course, we all know we have different disciplines and what leaders may also want to use their money.
Summarize, please.
They tend to use the autocratic style. However, this particular study contradicts research and idea. To review because that, as we all know, most of these farmer groups that are interviewed are basing on group savings of the members. So, the fact that they are basing on group savings of the members to run the organizations, as the savings are invested in the force of the savings on hand revenue. So, as their savings are having more revenue, the members will be very eager to monitor and see, yes, how man has brought back this profit, what is it doing, and at what point is it working.
Rachel, kindly summarize, please.
Thank you so much. So that element of the savings may cause the democratic style. In conclusion, we've seen that leadership plays an important role in determining performance, and we've also seen that it's better to use both democratic and autocratic interchangeably to achieve both efficiency and effectiveness. We've also seen that leadership styles are majorly influenced by committee sizes, leadership passion, and costs. So the recommendation are there should be a good balance between autocracy and democracy to achieve efficiency and effectiveness. Then farmer groups are better off maintaining an average committee size to support good balance between democracy and autocracy. And then the government and the development partners should continue sensitizing and training groups, farmer groups, about the various types of leadership styles and when to use which one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Rachel. Can we give an applaud of hands, please? Again, let's have only one question to the presenter, please. She's talking about issues that affect leadership styles and how it pans on the groups, farmer groups. Madam Rachel, thank you very much for your presentation. We thank you very much. I would want to move on to the next presentation, please, for purpose of time. Mr. Hesbon Awiti from Egerton University. Awiti is going to talk about factors influencing the extent of crop diversification among smallholder farmers in Kisumu County. And as he comes to the floor, Awiti is one of our former students from this university. Those of us who are hooked up to all these presenters, you can be through the chat, you can be posting questions to them, and they can respond online. Thank you. Mr. Witty, please restrict yourself to 15 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Onyuma. Thank you very much for the organizing team for welcoming me. I feel at home. As Dr. has said, I'm back home to showcase what they instilled in me when I was here in the year 2012 to 2016. I'll restrict myself to present this is my thesis work. Currently, I'm taking the master program at Egerton University. I'm done with the research, and hopefully, God willing, we'll submit and graduate December or after the December. I want to present the research finding on part of my thesis work, and that is factors influencing the extent of crop diversification among smallholders farmers in Kisumu County, Kenya. And I will take you, the content is introduction, the study rationale, the data, sources, methodology, study findings, policy implications, and lessons, and finally the conclusion. This is part of master program, my master thesis, as I've said, and I was working on response to climate risk, a crop diversification strategy among the smallholder farmers in Kisumu County. And now this manuscript that has been written and submitted for publication, and this work is under the supervision of Professor Gideon Obare and Dr. Eric Gido, both from Egerton University. And if you see the logo there, this work is funded by ARC, the African Economic Research Consortium. We have listened and we have seen, and from the CEC, the question arises about climate variability, and it's real. And unless we devise avenues or strategies to help these smallholder farmers, which are resource constrained, then these things will not make us to achieve the goal of food security and nutrition, and which also is part of this conference of sustainable food production. And this is challenged by that Kenya is primarily agriculture rain-fed based. And any slight change or any variability in climate will bring problem. And currently when I came back to Egerton, the rains has delayed and things are not good if you check the farms. And that shows you that climate change is real. So what can we do? We wanted to see that can we respond to climate variability through crop diversification strategy as a climate smart agricultural practice to respond to risk, because we know that these farmers are constrained in terms of finance, and implementing integrated practices might not be easy. So can we have at least cost-effective strategy that can help the farmers to be more food secure? And due to increasing threats of climate variability, according to July 2018, suggested that crop diversification strategy remain a suitable ex-ante risk management mechanism. And there, we need, as we practice it, we need to adopt climate smart crops. And this study used 4 crops, that is cassava, sorghum, sweet potato, and drought-resistant maize variety, which is, if you check the current project, the Kenya Climate Smart Agricultural Project, that was launched in 2019, they are putting much consideration to these crops. So, in line with that project, we want to see, can farmers diversify these crops along what they are producing so that they can be food secure in terms of nutrition, quantity, and all those aspects and parametric of measuring food security. The main objective of this work is to contribute to improve food security and nutrition among smaller farmers through production of climate-smart crops and a crop diversification strategy as a climate variability. Specifically, we want to evaluate factor influencing the extent of diversification as a mitigation strategy, because it is real, so we need to try to mitigate so that we reduce the effect. The question remains, what are the factors influencing the extent of crop diversification and mitigation strategy? And this one is main key, according to the study rationale, to inform the policymakers so that when they are debating, we are going to have a roundtable debate. What factors are critical, and how can we integrate some policies, like insurance policies and food and nutrition policies? And this one will come if we know the factors that influence the extent of practicing this strategy, which is climate smart. And again, we need to promote adaptation to climate variability, because it is here with us for us to be food secure and nutrition secure among the smallholder farmers. The data was collected from 267 randomly sampled respondents, and it was based on these socioeconomic variables for patients, as well as percentage of crop diversification as a climate smart practice. Then we used a structured questionnaire. The data was analyzed using the Crux double-added model as specified on the slide, and we used the Simpson index of diversification to compute the index or crop diversification index, and that is how it was done. Then we evaluate the extent, and the first stage was the probit model to determine the participation to this, those who are practicing this strategy as a climate smart. And then this next stage is a translated regression model to examine the extent of crop diversification so that the policymakers can be well informed. The study findings reveals that 98% of the total respondents interviewed were practicing crop diversification. However, only 20.63% of those who are practicing crop diversification has embraced production of this combination of maize, cassava, sorghum, and sweet potato as climate smart crops. Then again, majority agreed that, 82% strongly agreed that, and 16% agreed that crop diversification improves household food security. The findings in terms of factors that determine the extent and the propensity to practice crop diversification: household income, age, household size, education level, market distance, and frequency of information access on climate variability, farm size, and household were found to be significant. However, frequency of information access on climate variability, farm size, and household size were found to be the major factors influencing the extent of crop diversification. The results were a bit bulky in terms of tables, so they are presented in Word. What are the policy implications from this study finding? Number one, we need to create and promote climate change awareness. And remember, when the CEC of Nakuru County was talking about, the major issue was issue of extension services. And I'm very happy she mentioned that they are trying to employ even plant doctor to the lowest level, at what level, to assist farmers. So unless we create awareness that climate change is real among these smaller farmers, we will still have problem with food security. And this will help us to enhance the resilience in food system. Number two, policies that will improve smallholder access and control to land. And remember also she mentioned that these lands, when the olds have died, you find that those who are remaining behind might not know the productive importance of the land, and now might just sell it or make bricks out of it, and it's make it to lose the economic productivity in terms of agriculture. And now you find that now, if you can have some policies among smaller farmers to access and control land, this will enable them to practice crop diversification as a climate smart agricultural practice to improve food security. And then again, extension services. When I was in the field, they were really complaining. We have not met these people. Nowadays, the government are not employing extension services. The last time we met is 3 months ago, and climate is real. How can we assist them in terms of extension services? And lesson learned. What lessons were derived from this? We learned that any effort in promoting crop diversification as a climate smart practice should target improving land use and weather insurance policies. Because now, if your crops fail, nobody will insure your crops. can we have argument that we can incorporate the link between the land use policies and weather insurance policies with climate variability awareness and credit success? So even these farmers can access the drought-tolerant varieties that has been improved by our research organization like the Ecrlf. Then success promotion of practice of crop diversification as a climate smart require great access to timely and accurate information. Even the CEAC mentioned about the app, and I'm very happy that if we can have this in Kisumu County, that the farmers are constantly getting the information, then they will practice climate smart agricultural practices. But however, you find that these farmers do some work, they're old age and they're using the phones that cannot even download the app. So what can we do as the researchers to improve this access to timely and accurate information? Then again, reliable and accurate climate reliability is important in a farmer to make informed decisions so that they know at what time do we plant, at what time do we expect rain, when do we need to plant this type of variety, is it short or long term, and how can we incorporate, at what time do we rotate our plants to improve soil fertility, to improve our productivity. Those are the main lessons. And into conclusion, we say that more attention should be given to climate variability creation, access to credit, extension services, and land use policies to increase the extent of crop diversification. And again, finally, since crop diversification was found to improve food security and nutrition, agricultural productivity, as well as increasing the resilience of smallholder farmer system towards climate change, more attention should be geared towards conservative agriculture in Kenya as well as in Africa as a whole. This is because in line with the African Agenda 2063, we have the priority goal of climate change and resilience. And what can we do? The Africa Agenda 2063, the future Africa we want, in line with what we are doing today. What can we do in terms of climate variability and helping smaller farmers which are constrained in terms of resources to give them a cost-effective and climate-smart practice to improve household food security and nutrition and conserve our environment without any pollution. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your time.
Mr. Awiti, for that presentation. Can we give him an applause of hands, please? I'll take one question to the presenter, just one question. The rest we can post on the chat concerning issues of diversification as a strategy for, creating resilience in agriculture. One question, please. We can continue interact. Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Awiti, for the great presentation and quite relevant because that is my area of interest. And I don't know if the county government of, is it the sub-county of Kisumu, they have some interventions in place just to enable farmers diversify, especially on those 3 crops that you have mentioned, the cassava, sorghum, and sweet potatoes. And I was just also thinking aloud of the kind of index that you developed. Was it a composite index, or what kind of index did you develop? Thank you.
Okay, to start with the first question, the intervention, yes, I mentioned about the climate smart agriculture project. And in the semi part, that is a sub-county in Kisumu County, they are under that program, they are dealing with the sorghum vis-a-vis the cassava. So there is intervention of these issues of crops under consideration within the Kisumu County. But specifically in Kisumu West Sub-County, this program I'm talking about of the climate smart, they zero into indigenous poultry production. And the question based on the crop diversification index, yes, the crop diversification index, when we are doing the computation, it was based on the area of the crop that has been cropped. Because the extent to which you plant your crop vis-a-vis the area under coverage can determine the quantity vis-a-vis the output. So we developed that because it is measured and area-wise in terms of productivity. Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, Kevin.
Yes, Esbon, thank you for the good presentation. However, I have a major concern. When you talk about CSA,
Yes.
and your study was focusing on the crop diversification as one of the strategies, but you've just mentioned CSA. However, when addressing the issue of CSA,
Yes.
we have the three pillars, that is adaptation, mitigation, and productivity.
Yes.
So I really don't know what your study was addressing, which particular pillar, because you also recognize that there are trade-offs and synergies within these particular pillars.
Yes.
Was it that you focused on more on productivity and ignored other pillars? Or what was your study specifically addressing? Because when you talk about CSA, we would want to achieve all the three pillars.
Yes.
However, we recognize that there could be synergies and trade-offs.
Okay. Is when the study considers the three aspects. Number one, if you talk about the adaptation, we wanted a resilience or conservative strategy that is environmentally friendly, so that we improve the adaptation to climate variability. When it comes to production, remember, like now, if you check the maize in the farm around Njoro, the likelihood of productivity will be low. So what about if these smaller farmers could diversify, either in line instead of producing purely maize, which is common among smallholder farmers in the rural sector, they can produce cassava alongside, so that in case the output is not good, they can still rely on the output of the other crop so that they can be food secure. And this was evidence. The farmers were reporting that last time I only get one gorogoro, 1 tin of maize, and my cassava did well. So I sell and get 1 bag of cassava. So to this study, it is covering the three pillars of the climate smart agriculture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witty, for that presentation. I think as he leaves the floor, we can clap for him again. I want us to move to the next presentation. And scholars from agriculture, economics, agribusiness, ag economics, you are in the house. Please help us by trying to interrogate these presentations so that we help these researchers to put their best foot forward. Allow me to call upon Alex Machio from Bomet University. Is Alex in the house? Can he be hooked up, please? The guy is helping us with technology. Please, can we try to be a little bit faster so that we don't waste a lot of time? He's not online? It's called Alex Machio. Is not online. Okay. Then we move on to the next presentation. Kevin, Mr. Kevin Obondo. Kevin Obondo is from Egerton University, and Kevin is going to do a presentation on quality assessment of 3-water hyacinth compost types in Lake Victoria Basin of Kenya. Welcome, sir. You guys have a problem finding the presentation? We can move to the next one. Mr. Bondo, your presentation has disappeared? Oh, I think you can allow us to move to the next one as you search for that one. Are you there? Is Mr. Kengere Atambo Daniel in the house? Daniel? The presenter from Pwani University? Virtual? Can you guys look for Kengere? Daniel Kengere?
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, please allow me to share my screen.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, can you be able to see my screen?
Yes, we can be able to see.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kengere, as you can see on the screen, from Pwani University, doing masters in agronomy. My supervisors are Dr. Esther Mwini and Dr. Ecrlf. My topic of study is the effect of black shade net on water use efficiency for Chinese cabbage production within Kilifi County, Kenya. Of course, if I can take you through background information, cabbage is one of the integral part of human diet and very crucial in solving food and nutritional security problems. This said to contain phytochemicals that are anti-carcinogenic, It also reduces the risk of cancer, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and inflammation of digestive tract. This cabbage, of course, it performs well under the temperatures below 20, and if the temperature is above 20 degrees Celsius, it delays maturity, increase vegetative growth, and they lead to loose heads or no head formation. Their production in the tropics is constrained, of course, by climatic and endemic factors, which include moisture stress, high soil and air temperatures, high evapotranspiration, and unbalancing nutrition. Sustainable action, therefore, require an adoption of technologies that has the ability to modify the growth environment with minimal environmental effect. But therefore, we find that these technologies have not been exhausted. And for instance, we can use or adopt the use of shade nets, which has been used for quite some time in other countries, but here in Kenya and including other countries, it has not been fully utilizing so as to favor the production of cabbage in areas which experience unreliable rainfall and which are having relatively high temperatures. In China, for instance, you find shade nets are using to produce variety of crops during the summer season, where temperatures range between that 5 to 42 degrees Celsius. Therefore, this study aimed at investigating the effect of black shade net with varied intensities on the performance of Chinese cabbage in Ecrlf County, which of course received unreliable rainfall and relatively high temperatures of about 28 degrees Celsius. The objective of this study was to evaluate the effect of black shade net on water use efficiency for Chinese cabbage in Ecrlf County. Another objective was to determine the effect of black shade net on the growth of Chinese cabbage in Ecrlf County. And the third was to determine the effect of black shade net on the yield of Chinese cabbage in Kilifi County. Methodology, of course, two field experiment trials were conducted at Pwani University Agricultural Farm, Kilifi County. The experiment was laid out in a randomized complete block design and replicated twice. The treatment which we are using include 0% shading, of course, which was a control experiment, 50% shading, and 70% shading, of course, using black shade net as you had seen in the first slide. The amount of water which was used for irrigation or through was uniform among the three treatments. Data was collected, and of course, this data included air temperature, number of open leaves, quality of heads, and the water use efficiency, among others, which I never factored in this presentation. Then the data was analyzing. Of course, was subjected to analysis of variance and of using general linear model, SAS computation package version 9.1. The means were ranked using Dan's new multiple range test at 5% level of significance. So the results, as I'm going to display them, beginning with the first objective, of course, the air temperature in season 1, as you can see on the screen. So on the right-hand side, this shows the maximum, this shows the minimum, the maximum air temperature, and on the right-hand side, left-hand side, it shows the minimum air temperatures. Of course, in week 1 up to week 12, as you can see, I think there is some small errors there. This is supposed to be the maximum air temperature. Of course, the highest, beginning with the first one, which was control. So the air temperature during the first period or the first session, all away from week 1 to week 12, was higher under the control experiment. Then the 50% shading followed. Of course, average it was 32. Then it was lowest in 70% shading, as you can see. Then the minimum, of course, this was taken early in the morning at 5, and the treatment which had the more temperatures compared to the rest, it was a 70% shading, followed by the 50% shading, as you can see the trend, excuse me, as you can see the trend, and the control experiment had the minimal temperature in season 1. This was the same case in season 2, as you can see. The 70%, not 70, but the 0%, which is controlled, had the highest maximum temperature. As you can see, though, the bar graphs, which are black, represents the maximum air temperature under control, then followed by the 70% control shading, which had relatively low temperature compared to the control experiment, and the maximum temperature was lowest under 70% shading. But then when we come to minimum air temperature, shown by the line graphs, as you can see the trend. So the first one, of course, there's the 70% shading had more temperature comparing to the other treatment. Of course, as you can see the black line as it moves. Then it is followed by the 50% shading, also had relatively higher temperature, of course, for the minimum temperature compared to 0% shading, which was a control. And as I said earlier, these minimum temperatures were taken early in the morning, and the maximum temperatures were taken at the midday. Then the number of open leaves, as you can see on the screen, of course, if I can read what is at the low of the screen, that treatment means within a row followed by the same letters or letter are significantly different, not significant different according to LCD at 5% or at 0.05%. And the stars, the two stars which you are seeing, it is missing data. And of course, in season 1, of course, this is week 1, having season 1 and season 2, week 2, having season 1 and season 2. But then you can note season 1 had all through up to week 5. In fact, season 1, the crops matured earlier comparing to season 2. During season 2, temperatures were very high, and that's why in open or in control experiment, we are missing data as from week 3 to the 10th week. So relatively, the first season, because there was some raining, the crops matured earlier. But in season 2, because the rains were not there, we were only relying on irrigation, it went all along to week 10. So in season 1, week 1, as you can see, the number of open leaves in 70% and in 50%, there was no much difference. But then under control, there was a difference. As you can also see, it was the same in week 2, whereby there was no significance in all treatments. Season 2 was almost the same. As you can see, if we can go to week 3, the number of open leaves in 70 and the 50, there was no difference.
You have 1 minute, please. 1 minute, please. Can you summarize?
Okay, thank you. Then if we go to the quality heads, of course, this represents season 1, and this is season 2. And season 1, the number of quality heads under 50 and 70, they were relatively high compared to control experiment. In season 2, control had nothing because they had dried, and in 70 they had relatively higher or more number of heads. The same was with the water use efficiency. As you can see in season one, there was significance in 50 and 70, but in control it was low. This was the same case with the 50 and 70 percent control. Then if we move to conclusion, of course, in tropical climate, which is associated with relatively high temperatures, the use of black shade net for Chinese cabbage production, it improves this production and water use efficiency. But therefore, there is further research which is advocating to ascertain the long-term effect of black shade net on soil nutrients and the nutritional content of cabbage under net shading in comparison to open ground. Thank you so much, and that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much for that compelling presentation. Can we give him a round of applause? Audience, you can share with the presenter any questions, clarifications in the chat. At this point in time, allow me to recognize the presence of Professor George Owuor. George Owuor is a professor of agribusiness from Egerton University, and also the center director for SESAM. Professor Owuor is one of the mentors of Dr. Florence Opondo. Professor, welcome to this session. Thank you very much. The remaining presenters, because of time, I want us to again relook at our schedule. We would really appreciate if you can just go through your abstract, give us the key issues, what was the research all about, what was the method, the results, and your key conclusions, please. So that we only allow you 10 minutes because we are running out of time. Where is Mr. Alex? Allow me to move on to the next presenter, Francis Ogutu. Amepotea. You're Francis? Okay, take the floor, please. Just have 10 minutes, please. Francis is going to walk us through his research, that is agro-dealers' knowledge, perception, and willingness to stock a fungal-based biopesticide for management of Tuta absoluta in Kenya. I'll call him. Ten minutes, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. So I'm Francis Ogutu, a student from Egerton University. I'm taking masters in Okay, thank you. So I'm currently assessing agrodealer knowledge, perception, and willingness to stock a fungal biopesticide for management of tuta absoluta in Kirinyaga County. So, to the background, tomato is a popular vegetable extensively cultivated and contributes a lot to the economy through employment, income, and foreign exchange to the country. Now, Kenya being among the leaders in Africa, it has an approximately 410,000 metric tons, and the leading tomato producing counties in Kenya are Kirinyaga, Kajiado, and Taita Taveta with 37%. So over the past years, tomato production has been intensified, but the yields have, however, remained low. And this due to impediments such as, and key among the impediments are is the leaf miner, tuta absoluta, which causes damage of between 80 to 100% if not managed. Now, since the invasion of the pest in Kenya, tomato farmers have been relying on synthetic chemicals to manage this pest. Now, the synthetics are massively stocked by the agro dealers. There are also cases reported by Nderitu et al. About other practices which are used to control the pest, such as uprooting infected tomato plants, baiting, and killing the adult moth. Now, farmers use the chemicals because they are considered effective. They solve risks that come along with the farming. Now, the contribution of the chemicals cannot be underscored, but the chemicals have also caused a lot of damage health-wise and to the environment. There are also cases of pest resistance, residues in food substances, and cancer in human. Now, previous studies that have been done show that biopesticides are efficient in management of pests. And a case, for example, there is a case of the potato tuber moth, the rice ear headbug, and the oriental armyworm, as reported by Manikanta et al. Biopesticides therefore hold promises to replace chemical pesticides in the near future since they are sustainable. Now, due to the growing demand of the organic products, there is a developing notion on organic farming, which incorporates the IPM. The IPM is the integrated pest management, which involves mass trapping, orchard sanitation, and biological control. And biological control aspect take into account the use of biopesticides. Now, in partnership with private sectors, ISIPA is introducing a fungal biopesticide for management of the tomato leaf miner in an IPM approach. This study is therefore an ex ante study to determine the agrodealer knowledge, perception, and their willingness to stock the fungal biopesticide in Kirinyaga County. So the problem, agrodealers are compelled to stock chemical pesticide due to the growing demand from the tomato farmers. And this pest causes huge damage to plants, that is tomato, and the frequent exposure of these chemicals, however, they pose health risks to human and the environment. Therefore, use of the biopesticide, which has been proposed in the IPM component to manage the pest, seems to be efficient. However, the agrodealer knowledge, perception, and their willingness to stock is not clearly understood. On the materials and methods, data was utilized. The data utilized was from Kirinyaga County, and it was purposively selected due to the fact that it's the leading tomato producer in the country, followed by Kajiado and Taita Taveta, and the population of study was agrodealers dealing in pesticides. So these are the socioeconomic characteristics that were found during the study. And the knowledge, based on the knowledge and perception, most of the agro-dealers were aware of non-chemical practices for managing the leaf miner. And about 43% of the respondents were aware of the specific non-pesticide practices. And further, 79% of the respondents stated that crop rotation with the non-host crop was the main control measure put in practice by most tomato farmers. Onto the perception, the principal component analysis was used, and its robustness was tested by the KMO, Bartlett's test, and the Cronbach alpha test. And the three components were extracted, with the first one leading with 35%, and it was stressing about the effectiveness of biopesticide in crop protection over synthetics. The second dominant factors in the second component were the effect of biopesticide on human health and the environment, and the third was based on commercialization, which touched on price, the type of pesticide, and the demand. On the willingness to stock, the survey results also indicated that the main pesticide used by farmers was collagen, and 82% of agro-dealers were found to be willing to stock the biopesticide and pay at the same price as collagen. The analysis also indicated that the mean willingness to pay was 1,018 per liter for ICP, suggesting that the agro-dealers considered biopesticide efficient than the chemical pesticide. So the variables age was found to be negatively related to willingness to pay, and that depicts that the old agro-dealers were not willing to test the new technology. And access to social networks was positively related, implying that the agro-dealers who had access to the social networks, such as groups and extension officers, were willing. The access to credit facility was also significant and positively related. Therefore, those who had access to credit facilities were willing to stock. And access to information was also significant, and the agro-dealers who had access to this information based on prices, the type of pesticides, and the relevant information based on the market, they were also willing to stock since they had knowledge. So the findings also depict that agro-dealers attached a higher value to the biopesticide as an alternative pest management approach, therefore implying that there's a much concern that the destructive nature of Tuta absoluta causes severe damage, and there is need for an alternative solution for this. So from a policy perspective, based on the recommendation, there is need to limit the synthetic certifications that inhibit dominance of biopesticides, and there's also need to increase the level of access to social networks, the credit facilities, information among agro-dealers, and since these are the critical factors that influence the agro-dealer knowledge, perception, and their willingness to stock the biopesticide. So I'd like to acknowledge SESAM for funding my master's, ICP in partnership with BioVision for funding my research, and my supervisors, Dr. Beatrice Muridhi and Professor Patience Mchenga. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Francis. Ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, I would request that continue engaging the presenters in the chat. However, because we have a keynote address exactly 2 o'clock. I would request that we break for lunch, okay? And we take exactly 25 minutes so that again we can be able to convene and be able to listen to the keynote address. Thank you very much. For purpose of time, thank you very much. Those who have not presented, you still have your time. The two who are remaining, that is Mr. Kevin and Marcy, you have your time after the keynote address. We will start with you guys. Dr. Willie, you can guide us, please.
I swear.